Welcome back, everybody. Here we are, issue 69. This is the review issue. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we're going to go over is the Training Cruiser The Crucible. Again, this is something from the Clone Wars, is where you would have seen it. So if you haven't seen Clone Wars, by God, get to it. I don't know what you've been waiting for. So here we go. Although official evidence may never be presented, the Crucible was probably influenced by the ancient design of the Defender class light corvette from Rendili Vehicle Corporation, which was also used by the Jedi Order. This ship was introduced long before the Clone Wars, and as the Crucible was also categorized as an ancient ship, the visual similarities were most likely no coincidence. The Crucible's original manufacturer may have vanished from annals, but a certain Corellian signature could also be recognized in its design. Hondo's attack. Let's go ahead and do that one first. When the Crucible was was once on its way back to Coruscant after a trip to Ilum, it was attacked by Hondo Anaka's pirates. Anaka knew that the Crucible would be carrying priceless kyber crystals, so used his frigate, the Acushnet, to hijack and board the ship. Eventually, the younglings on board managed to outwit the pirates and, with the help of R2-D2, effect an escape, but not before their leader on the trip, Padawan Ahsoka Tano, had been taken hostage by the pirates and spirited away from the Crucible. Professor Haiyang, let's go ahead and talk about him real quick. Professor Haiyang was at least as old as the ship, and he served on, and most likely even older. As the only being permanently assigned to the Crucible, the architect droid knew every inch of the ship, especially the equipment that was needed to build lightsabers. Haiyang was damaged in the scuffle with Hondo Anaka's pirates, but was eventually repaired and ready again to tell intriguing tales to the next clan of younglings. Okay. At close to 100 meters in length, the Crucible was a fairly large ship, but its hull was rather flat. Just like the Defender class, the Crucible featured a front section that was shaped like an anvil. It had a small cockpit with several transparent steel windows. The ship was usually manned by a crew of between 4 and 10, including the pilot, the co-pilot, a navigator, and a scanning officer. If necessary, however, a single good pilot could operate the Crucible sufficiently well without a co-pilot. Sufficiently well without a co-pilot. Um, the ship had several escape pods at its flanks, as well as 2 docking bays. The Crucible's many halls and rooms were decorated beautifully, sometimes even with wooden panels. The aft section featured components such as the engines, deflector shields, and hyperdrive generator, and for propulsion the ship counted on the power of 5 large engines. The Jedi Training Cruiser carried no weapons but housed an impressive Rectenna device to scan the ship's surroundings for potential dangers. The Gathering. Although there were numerous Jedi training cruisers, the Crucible was known among members of the Order as the ship that carried younglings to Ilum, the ice planet in the unknown regions where they would perform the ancient Jedi rite of passage known as the Gathering, in which they would search for their own kyber crystal. If you don't know what a kyber crystal is, that's what they needed to have to actually make their lightsabers. During these journeys, the Crucible was manned by the younglings themselves, watched over by at least one older Jedi, possibly an experienced Padawan. The most frequently visited quarter of the ship was the training room. This spacious hold was where the younglings lived during their journey, and after they had returned with their kyber crystals, it was where they gathered to meet the ancient architect droid, Professor Haiyang. The droid kept a plenitude, plenitude of equipment on board with which the younglings could construct their own lightsabers. This was stored in cupboards and lockers, but Hyang always knew where to find a particular item in a matter of seconds. Among the equipment Hyang stored in the room were training helmets, remotes, sturdy sticks to practice lightsaber moves, and workbenches. Final Voyage. The Crucible's last outing would take place near the end of the Clone Wars. The vessel fell under attack from pirate gang headed by Hondo Anaka and later succumbed to the damage inflicted when the vessel tried to make its escape from Florum. Its wreckage crashed into the planet's surface where its precious belongings and ancient objects became the quarry of Hondo's men, shipwrecked scavengers, and eager galactic archaeologists. The Crucible exemplified what the Jedi Order stood for at the end of the Galactic Republic. It was a symbol from a bygone age and of an order that had not evolved in centuries. Though the ship functioned properly for what it was meant to do, the Jedi ultimately failed to realize the dangers that came with traveling aboard an unarmed vessel during the Clone Wars. Rescuing Ahsoka. With General Kenobi's fleet tied up in the pursuit of General Grievous and Ahsoka taken by the pirates during the hijack, the younglings on the Crucible were left on their own. They decided to rescue Ahsoka themselves and set their course to Florum where Hondo was based. The rescue plan worked out well, and with Ahsoka freed by the younglings, the ship was poised to intercept the pirates on their WLO-5 speeder tank. However, during the chase that followed, Weequay pirate Lieutenant Goru managed to score a fatal hit on the Crucible's central engine that destroyed the entire ship. Ahsoka noticed the imminent danger and warned everybody to abandon ship just moments before the Crucible crashed on Florum. Hondo had the ship's wreckage towed to his camp. Award-winning. The Defender-class light frigate from the Old Republic video game was an important influence on the Crucible's design. The vessel was featured in the entire story arc of Season 5 of the Clone Wars, which followed the adventures of six younglings during their most perilous quest. Professor Hyang was voiced by Scottish actor David Tennant, probably best known as the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who. Tennant won a Daytime Emmy Award for his short but memorable performance as Professor Hyang. The droid spoke of historical events ranging from the Battle of Rashfond to the peacekeeping of Paraloik, and mentioned lightsaber hilt materials such as black ankh, Pastilian ore, the bone from a Carthusian whale, and wood from the Brialark tree. Very cool. Bardotta, World of Mystics. Ooh. Located within the narrow belt of the colonies, Bardotta is a world swathed in mist and fog, orbited by a lone moon of Maudota. Protruding above the clouds are the tips of the towering mountains to which many of Bardotta's towns and cities cling. Not only are cities constructed on the peaks, they are also built into the stone sides of the mountains. Bardotans themselves are somewhat misunderstood people. However, despite their outward appearance as humble mystics who push aside worldly cares, the Bardotans are in fact master builders. Their villages and cities are expertly engineered in high rocky crevices, almost seeming to touch the sky, and through each settlement exists a self-contained city or town. These are connected to one another by a surprisingly sophisticated network of speeder lanes. The world of Bardotta is easily recognizable to the galactic visitors, populated by the deeply spiritual Bardotans and led by a monarch who presides over both church and state. Okay, we'll pause there, come up here. The Dagoyan Masters. Among the most honored of the Bardotans are the Dagoyan Masters, mystic spiritual beings who are highly attuned to the Force. However, despite their Force sensitivity, they are opposed to the ways of the Jedi Order on moral grounds. Unlike the Jedi, they are not warriors, but are instead in tune with the harmony of the universe. The Goyen masters believed that taking the of younglings at such tender ages was tantamount to kidnapping, and so traditionally had little to do with the Jedi. The planet is strewn with ancient temples, and with their belief system at the very core of their society and way of life, these places of worship are deeply revered by the Bardotans. In every one of Bardotta's settlements, there is a temple devoted to the deity favored by that town. But in fact, every temple is potentially a destination for pilgrims from all over the planet. Respect for their differences, as much as their similarities, binds the Bardotans together. The Jedi Order. However, a long-standing and deep-rooted schism between the Jedi and the Bardotans had grown over the centuries. The inquisitive nature of the Jedi was perceived as arrogance, even disrespect by the Bardotans. Such was the disdain felt by them towards the Order that even the presence of a Jedi on their world set the normally placid inhabitants on edge. Trust was hard to find, despite the fact that the Jedi themselves had no quarrel at all with the Bardotans. So it was that for long centuries, while Bardotta was more than prepared to open dialogue with the Republic, it was less inclined to do the same with the Jedi. In spite of this, there were many similarities between the ways of the Bardotans and those of the Jedi, and chief amongst these was their reverence of ancient philosophies. The disappeared. During the later days of the Clone Wars, a prophecy of the disappeared was foretold by the influential Frangral clan on Bardotta. This cult dedicated itself to the worship of the Bardotan demon of war, Balmoral, and had foreseen that the revered Dagoyan masters, the Force-sensitive mystics, who held a high place on Bardotan society, would disappear. Spiritual as they were, the Bardotans feared the words of the Frangal and so believed the prophecy when the Dagoyan masters did indeed start to go missing. The prophecy of the disappeared so troubled the council members of Bardotta that they prompted Queen Julia to contact the Senate. The result was the Republic sending in Representative Jar Jar Binks and Master Mace Windu to the planet to investigate. Little could either party have known that it was the Frangal cult itself that was behind the recent spate of disappearances. I'm not familiar with the word spate. Then, shortly after Binks and Master Windu arrived, Queen Julia herself disappeared. Using ancient powers, the Frangal were able to drain the life force of their victims and collect it, with the captured Dagoyan masters being among the first to be sacrificed. The ultimate goal of the cult was to deliver the life force to Mother Talzin of Dathomir. Referring to her as the Great Mother, the Frangal revered her powers and believed that she could lead them to greater glory. Their hopes were ultimately snuffed out by the actions of Master Windu and a more unlikely hero, Representative Binks. Zardosa Sticks. The desert moon of the Zardosa Sticks was where the members of the Frangal cult took the Dagoyan masters, and later the planet's monarch, Queen Julia, for sacrifice to the demon of war Balmoral. The site of the sacrifice was a pyramid, and the ceremonies were presided over by the Dathomirian witch Mother Talzin, whom the Frangali cult revered with revered along with Balmoral. The timely interception of Representative Binks and Master Windu, who had journeyed to the moon in pursuit of the cultists, saved Queen Julia from succumbing to the same fate as the Dagoyan masters who met their deaths at the site. Binks Reborn. The world of Bardotta was the first introduction to audiences in the sixth and final series of Star Wars The Clone Wars. The two episodes that featured the planet were notable for showing the bumbling Jar Jar Binks in a better light than the character usually enjoyed, with the Gungan, now Senate representative, being personally requested to be sent on the Republic mission to Bardotta. Binks is accompanied by Master Windu, but due to the Bardotans' mistrust of the Jedi, Windu initially has to pose as Binks' servant. The two episodes were written by the former executive editor at Lucas Books, J.W. Rinsler, best known for behind-the-scenes making of books. So he had making of Star Wars, making of Empire, that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, J.W. Rinsler, he has passed away, which is pretty sad. And look, Jar Jar is getting some love from the Queen. Pretty cool. Smuggling partners. I'm guessing we're going to be able to figure out what this is all about, right? The deep bond of friendship and trust between renowned Corellian smuggler Captain Han Solo and his Wookiee first mate Chewbacca is the secret of the success of the galaxy's best-known smuggling pair, and the key to their lasting business partnership. The success of one of the galaxy's greatest pilots and his co-pilot shows just what spacers can achieve when they work together at the helm of a starship. Chewie, as he is affectionately known, what has worked by Han's side for decades in honor of the debt he feels he owes Solo for his rescue from an incident earlier in their relationship. Some believe that the Wookiee life debt was at the heart of Chewie's pledge to join Solo as his first mate and to stand by him in all his smuggling endeavors. Quite early on, however, he realized that he may never get spectacularly rich as a result of the captain's reckless endeavors. Let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. Smuggling in groups. Smuggling is one of the myriad illegal activities carried out by the many criminal gangs operating in the Outer Rim. Sticking together for protection, but often not sophisticated enough in their methods to be deemed crime syndicates, these gangs simply make a quick buck where they can, taking advantage of the general lawlessness that characterized that section of the galaxy. Such outfits will typically crew stolen starships and are comprised of members with distinctly shady pasts. Smuggling, though, has also often been a vehicle for wider rebellion or espionage. It was not unheard of for Jedi Masters and Knights to go undercover as smugglers during the Clone Wars, and around a decade after that, a small group of rebels based on Lothal would engage in low-level smuggling and gun running, anything as long as it had a negative impact on the Empire. Later, both Rebel Alliance and Galactic Empire agents did the same during the Galactic Civil War, not just for intelligence gathering, but to ensure vital shipments made it to their forces. Much later still, it would not be unexpected to learn the Resistance and First Order agents also employed the technique. Smugglers who contracted to the Rebel Alliance, however, found that the freedom fighters did not pay well. Their service, like that of the Lothal rebels before them, was expected out of a sense of duty to the ideals of freedom in the galaxy. Legendary partnership. In time, the exploits of Captain Solo and Chewbacca have become legendary across the galaxy. Tales of their adventures are often exaggerated, many say by Solo himself, but it is a matter of record that they did squash the record for the Kessel Run in the Millennium Falcon, and played a significant part in the destruction of 2 Imperial battle stations. Into the bargain, uh, Solo escaped the clutches of Jabba the Hutt and the bounty hunter Boba Fett, and won the heart of Leia Organa, Princess of Alderaan. There were many more legends about Solo's past, but many were so widely fanciful that most right-thinking individuals doubted that they had happened at all. Such tales inspired imitation, and some young smugglers saved up for their own freighter to apply the spaceways like their heroes. This foolhardiness often resulted in such captains getting into trouble, way over their heads in debt, with the authorities or an ex-employer that after them for some infraction or other. These adventures all have one thing in common, though. Any captain, no matter how big or small time, was twice as likely to succeed and twice as likely to evade the attentions of the authorities if there was a trusted co-pilot or smuggling partner on the lookout for trouble. Other galactic smugglers have found themselves joining the profession in much the same way as Chewbacca did. Wookiees in particular would volunteer to serve a captain aboard a smuggling starship thanks to a cultural obligation of honor, or a debt of gratitude, or outright simple friendship, even love. Others were perhaps not so willing smugglers, and found themselves in partnerships with more zealous lawbreakers, job after job, as matter of necessity to keep someone else happy. Often that person would be a more powerful individual to whom they owed a debt that could never seem to be paid off. Many such smugglers would dearly love to go it alone or do something entirely different, but stick by their captains or partners in fear of what would happen to them or their loved ones if they jumped ship. Soul traders. There are many reasons why certain individuals might take to a life of crime alone, scouring the shadiest parts of the galaxy for work. Some spurn the idea of forming a partnership because they actually prefer to work alone, while others become hell bent on revenge for some injustice done to them or their family. Other single smugglers may be the sole survivors of a large gang that was busted by the authorities or taken out by a rival gang. One thing is certain, it's a rough galaxy for a smuggler without a partner. Starting over as a lone operative is rarely easy, and there always seems to be someone, somewhere, who wants to collect on an old debt or an old bounty. Legends of Han and Chewie. Han Solo's backstory was first elaborated on away from the Star Wars movies in a trilogy penned by science fiction novelist Brian Daley. This was not the first Star Wars spin-off novel, however, as Solo and Chewbacca were absent from the Splinters of the Mind's Eye published in 1978. That story was a sequel of to A New Hope and featured Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, C-3PO, and R2-D2 in an encounter with Darth Vader on the planet Mimban. I've actually read that, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Read it probably 25, 30 years ago, and it's a good book. Uh, it it's really weird because there's a lot of stuff in that book that you would see more or less in Empire, and the only difference was that Leia was with him, and also 3PO, obviously, but there was so many similarities as far as what Minbon was like, very similar to Dagobah, and that kind of stuff. So good book though. If you have a chance to read it, it's not. I don't think it's considered canon anymore, but it's still a good book. Daly more than made up for it with a Han Solo trilogy set in the time before the events of A New Hope. The first novel, Han Solo at Star's End, was first published by Del Rey in April 1979, followed by Han Solo's Revenge in June and Han Solo and the Lost Legacy in August 1980. They were collected into an omnibus called The Han Solo Adventures, which is still in print today. The first two books take place in the corporate sector, a creation of Daly's by the oppressive corporate sector authority. The third tale unravels in the Tyon hegemony, the cinematic story of Han Solo's early adventures are currently being explored and developed by screenwriters Lawrence Kasdan and John Kasdan and directors Christopher Miller and Phil Lord for the Han Solo movie slated for release in 2018. So of course we know Lord Miller ended up getting fired, and that did end up kind of squashing some of the backstory of Han, but these books are all pretty good. I read them and back in 1992, so close to 30 years ago. Um, very good books. Rather enjoyed them. So that's everything for issue 69. Next time we'll be doing issue 70. These are the parts we're going to get, and hopefully we'll make some more progress. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and may the force be with you always.